David Herszenhorn's Chief Brussels correspondent for Politico. He joins me now in Brussels. So what's your feeling? Deal? No deal? How close are they?
Oh, well, Richard, I think you'll like this. These negotiators, they mean business. They really mean business. They're working very hard to cut a deal before this European Council Leaders Summit. It's unclear they'll get there, as you heard Simon Coveney, the Foreign Minister of Ireland, say, but they're leaving open the possibility that they just might be able to pull a last trick.
I mean, it all works on the basis of how likely is there that there's something that the rest of us haven't thought of or come up with. All you really end up with is some very complicated machinations from the British.
Well, there's no question. EU negotiators have long told us that they looked at every border on Earth, trying to figure out, is there a way to more effectively manage the Northern Ireland border after Brexit? Now, we know they're zeroing in on two issues. Keep these C's in mind. Consent, how to give people in Northern Ireland some say over what will happen, and the last piece being customs. And this is crucial for the EU, where they're insisting that the EU's single market has to be protected, and that probably means Northern Ireland staying in a similar customs regime with the EU in the event that no free trade deal is reached. This is the crux of it.
Okay, so the ability to cobble, to the third C, cobble, the ability to cobble together something from this, I mean, essentially, it's just got to get you into the transitional period. So it's got to pass the EU, it's got to pass the Northern Ireland DUP, it's got to pass the Irish, and it's got to pass the British. I'm making that sound very easily. But if they don't, then at the summit in Brussels where you are, what will happen?
Well, if they don't have a deal at that point, and it may be that they're close to a deal, but they still need a delay because this is technically a very difficult thing to do. But by law in the UK, Boris Johnson is required, if he doesn't have a deal by the time of this summit, to come forward and ask for an extension. Now, that can be complicated for many reasons, not the least of which he promised Brexit October 31st, do or die. And inevitably, if it hasn't happened on November 1st, some of his opponents will say, hey, man, you're still alive. What happened? You must have lied to us.
All right, but talk me back to after the summit. Let's say they don't get a deal. Is it likely that they just all go home on Friday having no deal and waiting to see what happens under the Benn Act on Saturday? Or is it likely they will come up with, actually at the summit, offer the Prime Minister some form of technical extension, dressing it up however nakedly with a fig leaf, that there is something worth talking about?
Well, Richard, at Politico, what we're hearing, and we're, of course, talking to people about this, not just in Brussels, but also in Paris and Berlin and other key European capitals, is that there will be serious pressure, especially from the French president, Emmanuel Macron, to show that there is a real reason for a delay if another extension is granted, something substantive. That, to his mind, means either a British national election or a second referendum. You heard Boris Johnson already saying that that would be disastrous. He doesn't like the idea of a second referendum. He may have no choice but to go into a national election. Certainly, there are some folks in the EU who see them as having nothing to lose from another election taking place. Perhaps a government that's more friendly comes into power. In any event, I don't think there's any way for us to know where they'll be at the end of that summit. If there's no deal, they'll be waiting to see, does Boris Johnson come forward with an extension? How long of an extension will he request?
Right.
If it's under the Benn Act, it's put forward January 30th as a date. The EU absolutely does not have to agree with that date. They could push it out further, even as far as the end of the envisioned transition period. That's December 31st of 2020. We really just don't know. And of course, there will be some back and forth. How long should an extension be? Back 6 months ago, it was Macron pushing for a short extension, saying there had to be pressure on. He was almost alone in that. He succeeded, and we see how they're up against this crunch again, almost at Halloween.
My bet with you is, though, whatever does happen, it's going to be a very late night, and you and I will be drinking coffee in that dreadful room until the small hours of the morning, if not having breakfast. I'll buy you breakfast. If we're still going by, then I'll buy you breakfast. Good to see you. Thank you.